In the mists of the 14th century, a shadow fell across the world, a specter of death that crept through cities and across continents, leaving silence in its wake. It wasn't just a disease, it was the deadliest event in human history. This is the story of the Black Death, the plague that changed everything. What was this invisible killer? At its heart was a bacterium, a microscopic organism named Yersinia pestis. It found its perfect vessel in fleas, which in turn lived on the backs of black rats. These rats were stowaways on the world's burgeoning trade networks, unwitting couriers of a devastating biological bomb. When a flea bit a human, the bacteria entered the bloodstream, attacking the lymph nodes and causing them to swell into painful blackened sores called This was the bubonic plague. But it could also become pneumonic, spreading through the air from person to person, or septicemic, poisoning the blood directly. Each form was terrifyingly efficient, with a mortality rate that was nearly absolute. The story of its arrival in Europe begins far to the east, along the sprawling network of the Silk Road. The Mongol Empire, which controlled vast swaths of Asia, had unwittingly created the perfect highway for the plague. By the 1340s, it reached the Crimea, a bustling trading hub on the Black Sea. There, at the besieged port city of Kaffa, a new kind of warfare was born. Mongol forces, ravaged by the plague themselves, are said to have catapulted infected corpses over the city walls. When Genoese traders fled the city by ship, they carried more than just cargo. They carried the pestilence. In October 1347, 12 of these ships docked in Messina, Sicily. The townspeople were met with a horrifying sight: a crew of dead and dying sailors, their bodies covered in black boils. Authorities hastily ordered the death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. The rats had already scurried ashore. From this single point of entry, the plague exploded across Europe. It swept through Italy, devouring cities like Florence and Venice. It crossed the Alps into France, Spain, and Portugal. It sailed the English Channel in 1348, reaching a terrified England. It didn't stop there, spreading north to Germany, Scandinavia, and east to Russia, while also ravaging the Middle East and North Africa. No border could stop it, no army could fight it. Life during the plague was a living nightmare. As the disease tore through communities, societies fractured. The first response was quarantine. Cities locked their gates. Homes with the sick were sealed, sometimes with the healthy family members still inside, condemning them to a slow, agonizing death. The streets, once bustling with life, fell eerily silent, broken only by the rumble of the death carts and the cry of, "Bring out your Doug." Mass graves were dug, vast pits where bodies were layered like lasagna, with only a thin covering of earth. Entire villages were abandoned, their inhabitants either dead or having fled in terror. Fear and superstition reigned. People sought any explanation, any scapegoat. Some blamed misaligned planets or poisoned wells. Many believed it was the wrath of God, a divine punishment for humanity's sins. This led to the rise of the flagellants, groups of penitents who roamed the countryside, whipping themselves in a public display of atonement, hoping to appease an angry God. But their processions often did more harm than good, helping to spread the very disease they sought to escape. In the midst of this chaos walked a figure that has become an icon of the era: the plague doctor, clad in a long waxed coat, gloves, and a wide-brimmed hat. Their most terrifying feature was the beaked mask. This wasn't just for dramatic effect. At the time, it was believed that disease spread through miasma, or bad air. The beak was filled with aromatic herbs, spices, and flowers, like lavender and mint, meant to filter out the supposedly poisoned air. Their methods were crude and often useless. They lanced buboes and practiced bloodletting, armed with theories that had no basis in science. While some were charlatans, many were dedicated individuals who braved the infected households, offering what little comfort they could in a world consumed by death. The sheer scale of the death toll is almost impossible to comprehend. It's estimated that the Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people worldwide. In Europe alone, it wiped out 30 to 60% of the population. Entire family lines vanished. The economic and social impact was revolutionary. With so many dead, the old feudal system, which relied on a large peasant workforce tied to the land, crumbled. Suddenly, labor was scarce and valuable. Surviving peasants and artisans could demand higher wages and better conditions. Many abandoned their feudal obligations and moved to the cities, seeking new opportunities. This massive shift in power from the landowning nobility to the common people laid the groundwork for the end of serfdom and the rise of a new middle class. Death didn't just change the economy, it changed how people thought. The church, unable to explain or stop the plague, lost a great deal of its authority. People's faith was shaken to its core. Art and literature became obsessed with mortality, giving rise to the danse macabre, or dance of death, a motif showing skeletons leading everyone from popes to peasants in a final grim dance. It was a stark reminder that death is the great equalizer. This profound existential crisis forced a revaluation of life, God, and humanity's place in the universe, planting the seeds for the Renaissance and the Reformation that would follow. The great wave of the Black Death eventually receded around 1351, but the plague was far from over. It returned in periodic outbreaks for centuries, becoming a dreaded, recurring feature of European life. But each outbreak, while tragic, taught new lessons. The practice of quarantine, born of desperation, became a cornerstone of public health. The systematic study of how the disease spread and the attempts to contain it were the first steps toward the modern science of epidemiology. The Black Death forced humanity to confront the reality of infectious disease on a global scale, shaping the very foundations of modern medicine and our response to pandemics today. The legacy of the Black Death is written in our DNA, in our social structures, and in the annals of history. It was a crucible of fire and death that forged a new world from the ashes of the old. It didn't just reduce the population, it fundamentally altered the course of human civilization. The world we live in today was, in many ways, born from the plague. If you found this journey into the past enlightening, please share, like, and subscribe to Digital Time Vault for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.